Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to completely unpack three highly structured, strictly factual accounts of events that absolutely defy the laws of reality. Now, I know a lot of beginners or newcomers looking at this kind of data try to force traditional logic onto it, right? It's incredibly easy to just dismiss these accounts as folklore or maybe exaggeration. But what we're going to do today is look at the hard data. We're going to map these events out chronologically and logically. Because honestly, when you strip away the rumors and look strictly at the sequences of events witnessed by perfectly ordinary, credible people, you are left with something truly, literally impossible. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with our three impossible encounters, move right into the Paris premonition, examine a much more modern case in the trapped spirit, look at the phantom violinist, and finally wrap the whole thing up with unexplained mysteries.
Section 1. Three Impossible Encounters.
Section 2, the Paris premonition. All right, we are setting the scene in Paris, France, and the year is 1943. The city is occupied by the Nazis during World War II, so there is a very strict, very dangerous curfew in place. It's almost midnight when a Catholic priest named Father Paul Liotte hears a frantic, desperate knock at his door. It's a middle-aged woman, absolutely panicked, begging him to come quickly to give last rites to a young man who she says is actively dying. And this right here brilliantly illustrates where the data immediately trips up any conventional analysis. You expect one thing, but reality gives you another. Father Paul actually risks his life breaking a strict military curfew to travel to the address this frantic woman wrote down. He pushes his way into the apartment just to get off those dangerous streets, entirely expecting to find a tragic, bloody scene. But instead, he finds a perfectly healthy young man. The young man has absolutely no idea who the frantic woman was, and he is most certainly not dying. So, they wait around for this mysterious woman to show up, but she never does. Realizing it must just be some bizarre mix-up, the priest prepares to head home. But right before he goes, the healthy young man asks if he can just make a quick confession, to get right with God given the terrible state of the world at the time. Father Paul agrees, they talk, the confession is made, and the priest leaves. But the literal second he steps outside, the air raid sirens begin to blare. A massive bombing run is starting. Father Paul immediately sprints to a local casualty clearing center, basically a chaotic triage area for the mortally wounded, to administer last rites to the victims of the incoming attack. For hours, Father Paul navigates the horrific, bloody chaos of that clearing center. Then, just before dawn, he freezes. Lying on the ground, brutally killed by the night's bombing, is the exact same young man he had just spoken to. The man who was perfectly, totally healthy just hours before. Grateful that he actually stayed to hear the man's final confession, Father Paul reaches into the young guy's pockets to find some identification for his family. He pulls out a wallet and finds two photos of the man's mother. Now, when we look at the timeline of these events, the true impossibility becomes staring you in the face clear. Father Paul looks at the first photo and instantly realizes the mother is the exact same frantic woman who knocked on his door at midnight. But when he turns over the second photo, it's a picture of that same woman dead in her coffin. And the date on the back of the photo? April 8th, 1939. The woman who risked everything to ensure her son's soul was saved before the bombs fell had been dead for 4 years. And get this, the handwriting on the address she gave the priest, it was later matched perfectly to her historical records. Section 3. The Trapped Spirit. Shifting from wartime Paris to March 2019, we have two co-workers, a businessman named Fun and a young woman named Yomi, checking into a very dingy, severely outdated budget hotel for a week-long corporate trip. Now, to really grasp the context of this event, it's absolutely crucial to understand tetraphobia. It's the fear of the number 4 because it sounds just like the word for death in Chinese. So when Yomi is handed the key to a room on the 4th floor, she's immediately filled with dread. But it gets worse. The room is dead at the end of the hallway, which she firmly believed was a gathering place for spirits, and the room itself is covered in mirrors and reflective surfaces, which she deeply, deeply feared could trap a person's soul. The sequence of events here deteriorates rapidly. Yomi manages to switch to a room on the 3rd floor, but the very next morning she is inexplicably lethargic, sporting this terrifying, lifeless, 1,000-yard stare. Later that same day, their manager, Sai, is in his own room. Suddenly, out of nowhere, his demeanor entirely changes and he demands the entire team switch hotels immediately. They move, but Yomi just stays locked in her new room, feverish and acting completely bizarre. When the trip ends, she flat out refuses to fly home with the team. 2 days later, hotel staff find her dead in her room. Over the next 2 years, Fawn tries desperately to rationalize this trauma. If you look at this rationally, Fun took a total beginner's approach to the data. He thought, okay, it was a dirty hotel, she caught a really bad virus, and it tragically killed her. Simple. But 2 years later, over drinks, Fun asks his manager Sai if he agrees with that theory. Sai just shakes his head. He tells Fun he has it completely backwards. Sai reminds Fun of that exact moment in the very first hotel, the really dingy one with all those reflective surfaces, when Sai suddenly demanded they pack up and flee. Fun had asked him what was wrong at the time, but Sai wouldn't say a word. So what exactly did Sai see on the unplugged television screen in his room that terrified him so badly? Sai looked at Fun and delivered this truly chilling explanation. He said, Yomi didn't catch something from that first hotel. The hotel caught Yomi. Sai explained that when he looked at the dark, reflective surface of his TV screen, he literally saw Yomi's face trapped inside it. She had a look of absolute, mind-bending terror, just begging him for help. Sai realized her physical body was still walking around, but her actual spirit had been trapped by the reflective surfaces of that first hotel, which is ultimately why her physical body simply shut down and died a few days later. Fun eventually posted this incredibly detailed account on social media, and it went completely viral. Internet sleuths actually dug up the official court documents regarding Yomi's passing, but they only vaguely cited sudden death caused by various complications. Shortly after the story gained major traction, Chinese censors completely scrubbed Fun's post from the internet entirely, citing it for spreading paranoia and fear. So the only proof left of this impossible timeline today exists in just a few preserved screenshots. Section 4. The Phantom Violinist. Our witnesses to this final account are a 12-year-old girl named Maggie and her 19-year-old neighbor Kenneth, living in North Carolina in 1948. The data points here are just incredibly tragic. Kenneth was an absolute violin prodigy. He was on the verge of massive fame, but a terrible car accident completely mangled his right arm. Doctors flat out told him he would never, ever play again. He became a severely depressed shut-in, while Maggie, who used to do her homework to the sound of his playing next door, wanted to cheer him up, so she brought him a candy bar. Kenneth, looking absolutely wrecked, thanked her, gave her a hug, and made this chilling promise. He assured little Maggie that he would play his violin again, because if he couldn't, he just wouldn't want to live. A few weeks pass by in total, heavy silence. Then, around midnight, Maggie is jolted awake in her bed. She hears it, the beautiful, flawless, rapid melody of Kenneth playing his violin next door. She is so absolutely thrilled that he has miraculously recovered that she actually runs out of her house in the middle of the night, walks right up onto Kenneth's front porch, and steps through his unlocked front door into the entryway, just letting the gorgeous music wash over her. Maggie decides she wants to see Kenneth play in person, so she steps forward, moving toward the dark den. But the exact moment she crosses the threshold into the room, the beautiful music instantly stops. I really want you to imagine that sudden, heavy silence. Maggie peers into the pitch darkness of the den. Who on earth was playing that instrument? Maggie looks at the couch and lets out a blood-curdling scream. Kenneth was sitting there, fully stiff, clutching his violin. A medical examiner would later determine the completely impossible truth of the timeline. Kenneth had suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He had been stone dead for 2 full hours before Maggie ever heard the first note of music. Section 5. Unexplained Mysteries. When we step back and organize this information logically, we are forced to confront something deeply uncomfortable. A mother saving her son 4 full years after her own funeral. A woman whose physical body died days after her soul was visibly trapped in a screen. A mangled prodigy playing a flawless midnight symphony 2 hours after his own death. The structured timeline of these events leaves absolutely no room for a rational earthly explanation, no matter how much a beginner might try to find one. Which brings us to the ultimate question you should really take away today. If our exact tools of logic prove the impossible has actually happened, what unseen realities are existing right now just beyond our daily perception? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.